And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We're here with James from DC UK to talk all about DC United and their 2024 season. James, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Really excited to be here to talk about and maybe my scarf wall gives it away, but maybe my least favorite Eastern Conference team. It varies on the year, but I'll let it
I'm
pass.
just gonna sit here and just shake my head.
I'll let it slide. It's going to be a great chat because, of course, one of all the history, but there's been a lot going on with DC this offseason, a lot to talk about. So um,
Yeah.
we'll cover a ton of it: the additions, the losses, the new head coach, breakout players, and then maybe some predicted finishes at the end. I do want to ask you though: do you have a scarf that you'd like to show off? We got scarf of the week coming right up.
I do. It's one that I got given to me. So kind of give it a little bit of a backstory because it is a little bit special.
Yeah,
So every year, the supporter groups they get together and they raise money for DC Scores, which is a local charity, and it's one that's endorsed by the club as well. And I was lucky enough to actually donate one of my DC UK jerseys to it, and in return. They didn't have to do this, but District Ultras, one of the support groups, sent me a load of scarves and a bit of memorabilia just to say thank you for actually doing something for it. So I've got this little scarf, which is the Chico stand um, scarf with the old
yeah.
badge on it as well. So yeah, I have to say that is one of my favorite scarves that I've got, to say the least. So very cool.
Absolutely love that, man. That is so cool. I love the old logos are something I've been getting into recently. So above my shoulder here, we got like the Dallas Burn, the old Colorado Rapids.
Yeah.
Um, Down over here is Vancouver 86, I think, right over here. So just really big into the OG logos. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and the stories that you mentioned, one of the reasons we started doing this was one, we have a lot of scars we like to show off, but
Yeah.
two, because a lot of them do have some of those really cool connections. Mine actually does as well today. But you know, again, just to point some out, like the Columbus one right over here came from,
Yeah.
and it was in honor or in memoriam of an interview we did with John Bush, one of our first former player interviews.
Yeah.
So when you look back at the wall, you're like, oh yeah, I remember interviewing this person, interviewing that person. So they all have that little special. It's more than just a piece of fabric, what we like to say. So
Yeah.
love
Definitely.
love the backstory behind it. Mine is the first ever scarf I ever got. So
Oh,
to date back to what we call the oldest rivalry in MLS, we've
yes.
got the oldest scarf in the collection. It's very very simple. It's great quality. It's one of the ones, and I love these. These are some of my favorite that meet in the front. Make the little
Yeah.
logo. Yeah, make the little logo in front. Those are always my favorite. I don't know why. So this comes to me with every game I go to. It's always the one that I pick. And then my friends or who if I bring my pops or whatever, they get whatever's left on the wall. So
Yeah.
they're secondary. But um, I think a lot of people love scarves, but I think people mostly are here to listen to what we think about DC United's 2024 season. So let's chat a little bit about where we are currently.
Yes.
Troy Lesesne, former Red Bull Troy Lesesne, taking over for his first season in DC after just half a season as an MLS head coach. Takes over a team that finished 12th in the East, 22nd overall, 41 points, 9 wins, 11 losses, 14 draws, and a missed out on the playoffs. How is Troy being received in DC? I know how I see him, but how are you seeing him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been lucky enough to actually speak to him on a few occasions already.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, so I get to go on the press conferences. So I register, I get the link to join via Zoom, even though I'm all like thousands of miles away. But the club respect what I do, and yeah, I've actually spoke to him today, believe it or not. We had our press conference before the game that we've got tomorrow, which is going to be on the 9th of February. And yeah, I think from a fan's point of view, everyone's receiving them really well. They're excited by a young coach being in charge of the team. He's saying all the right things as well about having this new identity, being realistic as well with our progress, especially during the preseason. Because I asked them, "How are we looking? How far away are we being ready for the first game of the season?" Said It's not going to be perfect, but we're in the position that we're going to be in for the first game of the season, and we reckon it'll be complete. There'll be a world of difference from the first week to the last week of the season, and I love that honesty. And yeah, I think I'm excited by it. I think the fans are excited by it, and the players are certainly bought into it, which is the main thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm upset that we didn't bring Troy back because
Really?
I was a big fan of, so Troy took a team that had no business being anywhere in the playoff conversation
Yeah,
and got them into the play-in round. We talk about how big MLS playoffs are, and that's a whole other side story. But the fact is, this group that he took to the playoffs had no business being there with the injuries that we had and the underperformances that we had. But when you talk about the players buying in, that I believe is his best quality for you guys. Is
yeah,
you listen to him talk, and he could tell you, fairies exist, unicorns exist. You just got to follow the rainbow in there, and you're running over the rainbow. Like
yeah,
you want to play for this guy. He protects his guys. I don't have the exact number on me, but I'm fairly certain he was either the leader or like top three in yellow cards on our team. I think he had about 8 or 10 of them in the
yeah,
25 or so games that he had. He doesn't take, he doesn't allow his guys to get pushed around. He stands up for them. Maybe he goes a little bit too far sometimes, but that's just who he is. It's in his
yeah,
personality. I believe that if we had given him the investment that any coach deserves, because Red Bull don't ever give the proper investment to anybody, not at least since 2013. But I would have loved to see what he could have done, because you're right. He knows all the right things to say. He's got the right idea. He's got the identity, and I'm
yeah.
really, really interested in what he can see to see what he can do with DC, which is why I'm also kind of upset he went there, because I think he's going to make them good, and I don't like that from a personal point of view.
Well, I'm really happy that you're saying that as well, because I think you could say he's all right, he's okay, but the fact that you're upset about that, that means yeah, we've got someone good, and it's a complete world away from the manager that we had before, and Wayne Rooney, the big name and all of that, and it's just it genuinely feels like we are getting into a place that we are hitting that reset button. We're starting afresh. We've cleaned out pretty much the entirety of the front office, apart from one big person that we all don't want to see around, but he's really not doing much with the club anymore, which is Dave Casper, the former GM, who's in an advisory role now. What take whatever you want from that.
Yeah, whatever that means, right?
Yeah, and yeah, everyone's new to the club. Which has meant a lot of the good people who I felt should have stuck around has now gone. But to get that fresh start, you need to clean out the closet and get new things in.
That's right. And speaking of new things in, we want to talk a little bit about what sort of additions. I mean, we are doing a series right now where we're grading every transfer in, everybody that's come in, what impact they're going to make, and DC's list is as long as you'd like. So, in your
Yeah,
opinion, which is the best of the lot?
I mean, it's a tricky one because there's been, as you rightly said, there's been so many additions that have come into the club, but I think the biggest one for me has been Gabriel Parani, signing him on a permanent basis. We had him towards the back end of last season. If you look at the stats on paper, they don't scream of anything brilliant, but he brought the excitement. And I think once we get a full season out of him, it's going to be a really good season from him. He's going to get the freedom to do what he needs to do. He's going to have the experience of Click next to him and be able to be mentored by him, learn the tricks of the trade. And I think we've kind of got a good mix between a few older players, and we've brought in, I think it was 26 and under players. And the other guy is 27. So, it's really good. But yeah, Pirani, and I think the other, if I can add a couple more in there.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
yeah, because it's been such a wild off season for us. The new GM in Ali Mackay, I think that's been a great addition. as we've seen that he's been able to bring these types of players in. We've wanted young players coming in. We not wanted the older heads like another Benteke or another Click because there's only so many experienced players you can bring in. And then obviously our new head coach as well. So yeah, I think some really good big additions we've made over the off season.
Oh, 100%. Like, we give, we just give basic grades, right? A, B,
Yeah,
C, D, minuses, plus. I think the lowest grade we gave was a C, and that's because it's just a young player who probably is going to take a year or two to get in Ethan double air.
double A. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
literally I was going to say double A.
yeah. For me, and it maybe you can call it a homer pick. Lesesne is big in the high press. He loves the energy. He loves the work
Yeah,
rate. Jared Stroud has an engine that doesn't quit.
yep,
He is going to give you exactly what Lesesne wants because Jared Stroud is Red Bull home, born and raised, as is Troy Lesesne's coaching philosophy, right? So I think Jared Stroud is going to give you a lot more than some of your other wingers have in the past couple of years.
yep.
Um, and it's not the prettiest pick, right? It's not the biggest money signing or the most flashy, but he's going to work for you like nobody else will work for you, and that is going to put all the pieces together. So, really excited to see what he can do for you guys there.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's when he got taken in the expansion draft, I was really upset. So I was like, this guy had a future, and now we don't get to see it in Red Bull colors, but that's okay.
I'm surprised you've gone with that because I think he was one of the guys who came in from when we traded Durkin over to St. Louis City, which it's yeah, I'm genuinely surprised you've gone with that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's more of it's not the prettiest pick. It's not like the oh my goodness, this guy is going to light the world on fire. You might not even see it in the stats, right? But the
Yeah,
underlying numbers are going to show you that if Lessane's system work, it's probably going to be because of Jared Stroud.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, that being said, as players come in, other players do need to go out. Who is the
yeah.
biggest loss for you guys, do you think?
Um, I mean, out of the players that have people that have gone already, I don't think there's been anyone that we could say that has been a big loss because we've just been so poor recently. And that's genuine. But if
Yeah.
I had to pick someone, it would be Andy Nahar, because of the homegrown, the link to the club. And to be fair, when he's on his game, he is one of the best players around. He can take on a player or two at will without even having to think about what he's doing. He can just do it together. But his biggest downside was his injury record, the fact that he couldn't string a number of appearances together. Um, so unfortunately, it was just salary that was being used up in the cap that we could use better elsewhere, really. So yeah, I don't think there's been really anyone massive that we're going to be going. Shame we haven't kept him.
Yep. And that's exactly what I have in my notes here is when you are looking at a team that has missed the playoffs and missed the playoffs consistently, very rarely do you see somebody who is a big loss.
Yeah,
I also had Andy Nahar as my biggest one because of how versatile he is. You can play him on the wing. You can play him as an outside back in a three.
yep,
You can play him as a pure wing back. I mean, you could do a lot with him. And I assume because of his history in his past, he was a fan favorite. Um,
yeah,
and I think Troy would have liked to have him around exactly for that reason, just to plug and play in areas he might have needed that experience. Another guy I listed was Donovan Pines,
yes,
I
yeah,
not somebody that I personally was super like thrilled with. Like his time in the national team, which is where I saw most of him, was okay.
yeah,
For a young player, young center back, right? Tons of ability to grow and get better. But I just never thought that was a standout center back with DC. I thought that it was always the conversation of this is Pines' year. And then we talked about 10 other center backs that were in Donovan Pines before we started talking about Donovan Pines. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, I totally get that. And he certainly had a number of years with us, and the last season was actually he played pretty well. And yeah, you're right. He is a little bit of a loss. Glad he's been able to find a club over here in England, which is great. So being able to keep up with him and see how he's getting on and his progress with Barnsley, which is absolutely brilliant. Um, but yeah, he wasn't a standout. His main strength was his speed. Even though he stood at 6'5", he was quick
Oh yeah.
for a big guy, really quick, and he had a good tackle on him. I would say his ball control and his passing ability was something that was massively lacking, and I think one of the reasons why we weren't too sad to let him go was the fact that that just hadn't come on as quickly as it needed to, and hopefully he gets to be able to improve on that whilst he's over here in England.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why I think I listed him here as well. When Lesesne had, Sean Nealis and Andres Reyes, it didn't matter if they could break a line. Like they were
Yeah,
just bodies who could track down, when you're pressing that high, you've got um a lot of 1v1 defending out of your center backs, and having that athletic ability and that tackle ability on you is a really good piece for you, which is why I think you'll feel him a little bit more now
yeah,
if, and this is a big if, right? If Lesesne sticks with, I assume he will, with
yeah.
the high press and the win the ball in good areas mindset that he has had. It was really interesting. I got to watch a game from him. I don't want to go too far down the Troy Lesesne rabbit hole, but he had a really interesting formational. I'll call it a tactical plan where when
Yeah,
we played against Cincy in the playoffs, I was there and I got to watch it kind of head on. And defensively, it was five. It was five with 3-2. When we attacked, it was a 4-2-4 with Dylan Nealis, who was a natural right back, playing right center back, who
yeah,
shifted into right back, and then Kyle Duncan played right wing, which is
yeah,
one of the other reasons I left Andy Nahar on there as well, because if you had him in that back three of a five, you could
yeah.
transition him into that same system, which I think he liked a lot. So definitely really interesting in that sense. Um,
He actually talked about that today in the
oh
press
yeah,
conference. Yeah, because he was asked about tactical stuff as well, and he was talking about not having a fixed formation as such. It was just like it's just one little piece of the tactical puzzle, the formation. So we could play it look like a three, but it could be a four, it could be a five, it could be whatever. He just knows he needs players who can play in multiple positions. And I think when you look at it, that side of things and you look at the modern game now, it is like that. You start off with a formation, but it's going to transition into other things throughout that 90 minutes, and it is going to be a little bit different for us this season, I think.
yeah. I mean, we're trying to tell our kids at the college level here the same thing. Like formation really doesn't matter. It's all about what your
No.
roles are inside of that formation, and if you follow those roles the way we're asking you to, you'll be successful. But
Yeah.
they're still stuck in that. I'm going to be a right center back, and that's it. Or I'm going
But
to
if,
be a number six, and that's it.
yep,
But we're
yep,
allowing you to go forward. No, no, no. I don't go forward. Not my no. What do
yeah.
you mean you don't go? So we've never had to fight somebody to go score as badly as we have here.
Oh
That being
dear.
said, yeah, it's fun. But that being said, as we talk about those biggest losses, that means there are going to be holes in the system. Who is the player to watch this year that might break into a bigger role this year?
I think the biggest one is going to be probably Jacob Morel, the guy who we signed in the Super Draft um, from Georgetown University. He's when you look at his sort of highlights and they call them sizzle reels on YouTube from his Annapolis Blues days. He looks great, and we've seen him score in preseason as well, and he scored an absolute banger, and I mean a proper banger on his first appearance in preseason. It was just a beautiful finish with his left foot, I think it was, if I remember rightly. So for me, he's hopefully going to be one of those players who will step up, but it also means that for me, there is that hole there up top. We've got Benteke, we've got Christian Fletcher, we've got Jackson Hopkins, Pirani, who could be all those attacking players. But if we lose Benteke to an injury for any period of time, who's going to fill that hole? And for me, that's our hole that we are really missing. We've got plenty of defenders, we've got plenty of midfielders, but leading the line, Morel and Benteke, it scares me a little bit that we haven't really got anyone proper to lead that line up top.
I think that's totally fair. And mine kind of goes along with that as well. And I might need some clarification here because I couldn't find the exact answer to what I'm looking at.
Go on.
Because there were a few names that popped up, but the one that popped into my head was Christian Fletcher,
Yeah,
because he's at Swansea U21s, and the dude just couldn't stop scoring. From
yeah,
everything that I kept saying, the dude, I mean, hat tricks and braces and all over the place. Dude couldn't stop.
yeah,
And I wasn't sure when or if he's already come back, when that loan ends. I couldn't find an ending date.
yeah. So he came back last month. So it was only to
Okay.
the end of the calendar year. So he's back. He was back for us for the start of preseason. So
Okay.
yeah, he's back with us now.
Good. That makes me feel better then, because I didn't want to pick somebody who wasn't going to be here for half a year. But
Yeah,
it'd be really cool to see if he can have a really breakout year in 24, because if you can go over, and again, the U21s overseas, I'm assuming are a little bit of a lower level to where we're at, maybe.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah. So, but if you're not performing there, you're definitely not performing here, right? But if you perform there, then you've got a shot of doing something here, and that's kind of what I want to see, because I can't really put my finger on the last time. Like, I remember seeing a winger at DC that I was like, oh, watch out for him, right? Like, they've always been very strong centrally and up top. They've had the
yeah,
big names but wide players, and that's actually MLS across the board. We say that all the time on our
yeah.
podcast, that when we're trying to do like a top 10 strikers of the 2000s or whatever, or that's easy. Top
Yeah.
top 10 left wings and right wings, or left mids and right mids. We've got like
You
three
got
to
to
choose from in
combine the
the
two positions to try and get something together,
wide
haven't you?
players,
Yeah,
wide players.
yeah,
So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if he could step in and become somebody, to put a name on it, maybe like Kevin Paredes from the DC days, right? If he
yeah,
can be the next guy.
yeah. I mean, he's probably our last, well, definitely our last exciting winger that we had, and he was just something else. He was such a great guy. I had him on my podcast a few years ago when in his first season with the club, and he was so fun. And
Cool.
it just brought he just had so much energy off the pitch, and then he had so much energy on the pitch. And it's like, where does this energy come from? How have you got so much energy? But yeah, what a lad. And he's doing really well over in Wolfsburg right now. So great
Yeah,
to see him performing.
yeah. The beauties of being young, right?
Long time ago
Yeah.
now.
So they throw me in goal here during training sessions sometimes, and I'll take 4 shots. I'm like, I'm over this. I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. The one thing I want to ask is actually what you're asking, and what that means is what is your one question for the year? You're watching the games, and what's kind of that question that's in your mind as you watch these games that you're trying to analyze?
Yeah. So I thought long and hard about this, about what is going to be the one big thing and one thing to ask this year is, but it always came back to one thing, and that was, are we actually going to be any better off with all this change? Are we going to be any better off than what we were this time last year? Um, that's when it comes to the end of 2024 season. Have we made the playoffs?
Yeah, that's something that we've been talking about on our side. Was you kind of had a very similar offseason last year too. Lots of players in, lots of players
Yeah,
out, new coach. Well, Rooney's first full season, right?
yeah,
Um, and it didn't work. Now, why? There's a whole bunch of reasons you can point to, and we did a whole episode on what went wrong, and you had off the field issues with a bunch of different players here,
yeah,
overseas, coaching staff. I mean, a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes that definitely didn't help. But um, yeah, it's a fair question. Does all of this change lead to success?
yeah,
For me, I'm thinking, is the team going to buy into what Lesesne has to do? I know we talked about how he's really good at it, but he expects so much out of his players physically. I mean, like
yeah,
like I mentioned, Kyle Duncan had to have covered in that playoff game up and down and up and down. I mean, 11 miles of just sprints, right? Because the second we lost the ball, he's got to get back in.
yeah,
So there is a lot there. And if there is one player, maybe like a Benteke, who's like, I'm okay, I don't want to do this, fine. If there's a second player who's going to say, I don't want to do this, that system falls apart, because these teams can pick it apart. We've seen that before. We've had to find the right group of 11 to do what we want to do. Um, so whether they buy in long term, how long it takes them to finally commit to it, and if Lesesne picks effort over ability, does that have anything to do with your results as well? So that's kind of where my view is.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. Like I said, for me, it is just I want to see some tangible improvements, and that's it. I just want to see something that I can go, yep, that's we're in a better place. We're playing a better style of football. We won 10 games this year versus 9 of last year, or something like that, just to bring that a validation to my optimism that I always have and always will have, because I'm just that kind of guy, and I'm a sucker for punishment when it comes to football. And you know, yeah, I just want to see some. I want to see some success from us. We've not won a playoff game. It baffles. I can't even remember the last time we won a playoff game, let alone a home playoff game or anything like that. So just to get to there would be amazing.
There's only one playoff game that sticks into my mind that you've won, and I refuse to speak about it because if I do, we'll be here for the next 4 hours.
Oh, I won't go down that
Roy
road. Don't
Miller.
worry.
Roy Miller. You got Mark Geiger. Nope, I'm not
We're
going to
not
do
we're
it.
not going to go down there. Don't worry.
We're not going to do it because
No.
it's going to be bad. What I do want to say is you mentioned you want to see tangibles, you want to see results.
Yeah.
At the end of the year, where is this team finishing? What do you think?
Well, I think we are going to be better than what we were last year. And I think even if we make it to the play-in round, it's going to be it's an improvement on the last few years, and I think we can do that this year. I think we can make it into the playoffs, whether it's the playing round or standard playoffs. Don't care. Genuinely, don't care. I just want a postseason. It's been too long. I've been doing this podcast for this is my 6th year doing it now, and it just feels like it's just been so long since I've actually done a podcast where we've had some postseason action. So yeah, that's. I think we can do it. I think we're going to get postseason action this year.
I like the optimism. I'm right about there with you. I think I like DC, but I liked them last year too. But I do believe the difference is I think Troy is going to get the most out of them. I don't think they're that upper echelon of Eastern Conference because this
Yeah.
conference is insane. We were
It's so
previewing.
competitive at the
Oh my
moment. It's
goodness.
crazy how competitive it is.
We've previewed. I think this is our ninth or 10th Eastern Conference team that we've previewed so far. And every time it's like, okay, we need to predict where FCC is going to finish, where Atlanta is going to finish, where Columbus is going to finish. How do you put all of those guys into a? You don't know. And
Yeah,
we're do a predictions episode towards the end of this whole previews, so that'll be really fun. I think the ceiling for this team is playoffs, right? I
yeah,
do think it's possible. I'm going to say 6 or 7 is like the absolute ceiling, closer to 7. But
yeah,
6 is if everything goes right and they scrap out some points, I think 6 or 7 is reasonable. I can also see them missing the playoffs, as we mentioned, if they don't buy in, if they don't really love what's going on. I could see that too. So I've got them between like 7 and 10, maybe 7 and 11, where they can either make it, play in game, or miss it, and none of it would surprise me.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. That's a beautiful way to answer that. Is just like it wouldn't be surprised at whatever happens.
yeah. The only surprise that'll get me is a supporter shield or a wooden spoon. That'll be
To be
that's the
fair,
only thing
I
that'll
wouldn't
catch
even
me
be
off
that
guard.
surprised with a wooden spoon.
We gotta have a little optimism in Troy. Um, James, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for jumping on with me.
You're very welcome. Always a pleasure, and happy to do it again if you ever need me back.
Absolutely, and the same to you. We've got, like I said, if you want to talk about the best team in the Atlantic Cup, I'm right here for you. Or we've got Atlanta with Connor, who is not here today, but we'll both be happy to jump on and chat with you because this was tons of fun and really really enjoyed it. So thanks so much. I want to give you some time to tell our listeners where to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So on pretty much all the socials, standard stuff really, but on I am going to call it Twitter. I'm not going to call it the other name because I refuse to call it by the other name. But it's at DC United Kingdom on Twitter. on Instagram at DCUKFC because somebody already had DC United Kingdom, which was rather annoying. Those are my two main social accounts that I tend to use, but I'm also on YouTube with my podcast, youtube.com/at DC United Kingdom. And if you listen to the audio, you can do. So wherever you find your podcast provider of choice.
Wonderful. Guys, make sure you guys go over and give him some love. He's got some great DC United content. You know, make sure you know he came from us. And if you liked it and you're new here, make sure you're following us. We do a ton of, we got probably about half of the teams left to go for our season previews. So make sure you subscribe to see when those come out and go watch the ones that we've already done. They're really great. And then we also do MLS history, so make sure you stick around if you're into the history side of things. And then just your average games and normal podcasts, takes like everybody else does. So, James, thanks so much again for joining us, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you go subscribe to DC UK, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players in MLS podcast. See ya.